All right. As I promised, I was going to start a new series here on my channel called Unplugged, Meet Me in a Tent. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, you saw that I mentioned that I was just diagnosed with prostate cancer. And today is the very first episode of Meet Me in a Tent. And I have two fine gentlemen that I'm going to introduce here in a minute. But let's go ahead and get this conversation started.
Yeah. Unplugged. We in the tent now. Yeah. Pulled up to the woods, real talk, no filter. Life hit different when you sit with a healer. Campfire glow, yeah, the truth get loud. No stage, no mask, just a man in this crowd. We talk pain, we talk growth. We talk purpose, every scar got a story. Underneath the surface, from the struggle to the strength, yeah, we laying it out. If you listening close, you gon' figure it out. This ain't just a pod, it's a place to be real, where the silence get loud and the broken can't heal. So step in the tent, leave the world outside. Unplug conversations, let your truth ride.
All right, so today joining me, well, I'm gonna let these guys introduce themselves, but man, I think this is probably I couldn't script this even better. The best way to get this series started. Ron, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna start with you, OG.
Okay, so basically, my name is Ron. I live in California, and I am a prostate cancer, I guess, survivor. You want more than that, Anthony? Anthony?
Nah, that's good, man. Whatever you want to share. What about you, Larry?
My name's Larry Joe, and living up in Northwest Arkansas now, and I am also, at this time, a prostate cancer survivor. They say cancer, you're always working with it.
Well, let me tell you how we got here. If you watch the videos that my wife and I went on this cruise ship, went on that This Life Disney cruise, I met Ron. And I don't know why we even had this conversation, but we were doing a 5K. And Ron, can I say your
Sure.
age?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ron is 77,
Right.
correct?
He's 78 in a few months. Yeah.
Ron will be 78, and Ron has so much energy, man. I was like, and I'm struggling, and I'm hot, and Ron just moving like, check your heart rate, and he's got to, and we just had this conversation. Ron said, yeah, I'm 77 years old, retired military, and then he said, I don't know why it just came out that I'm a prostate cancer survivor, and I don't know why it clicked with me, because I was actually going to the doctor at this time to figure out whether or not I had prostate cancer. And then once I got the diagnosis last week, the first person I thought about was Ron. So when I reached out to Ron and sent him a text, he said, I told him, what I wanted to do with my YouTube series. And he was like, yep. And I said, he said, well, I got somebody else that I think that, would fit in, and here we are. So let's talk about black men and prostate cancer.
Let me tell you a little bit about my story. My father died from prostate cancer when I was 29 years old. He was 59. They found it in him when he was 55, and it had already gotten outside of the prostate. That's important because he lived 4 years later, longer. but he had some tremendous pains in the end of his life. And I saw that and I said, I don't want to go through those pains. So at age 30, I asked my doctor for prostate examination. And he said, we don't give those to guys as young as you because you don't have to worry about it. I said, well, let me tell you a story. And I told him the story of my dad. So he started giving me prostate PSA test, and he started giving me the finger wave, the digit test. And he did that about 10 years. And after 10 years, he said, I'm going to stop the PSA test because I don't really believe in them that much anyway. There's a bunch of arguments going on between doctors of whether they're valuable or not. So he kept giving me the finger wave, and that happened for the rest of my time until that doctor passed away. Went to a new doctor, and she took a full panel test on me and said, oh, I want you to talk to a urologist. Has some concerns here. I talked to the urologist, and I don't know what you know about PSA, prostate-specific antigen, but that's one of the ways you can tell that you have a problem. It shows up in a blood test. And if you get over a 4, that's a concern. 8 is definitely a concern. Mine was 18. So, yes, I said 18. And they were pretty sure that I had some problems. The thing is, the digit test never found them because my prostate wasn't that enlarged. That was not a problem. And the problems were on the side of my prostate next to my bladder, and you could not feel the bumps. So digit tests may be useful, but the PSA I would go with also at any time because you just can't tell what's going on in that system.
Wait.
That's how I found out I had prostate cancer.
Now, Larry, let's back up for a minute. You said you started your exams at the age of 30?
My doctor did not want to do it because he said, we don't test guys your age for that. It's not a problem. But I said, but when they found the test in my father, they estimated he had it for 20 years at age 55. And I said, well, That's a family-related thing. I want to be tested. Now, my uncle, I had an uncle who I asked him, he was 74. I said, Uncle, why don't you go and get yourself tested? My uncle said to me, he said, I'm 74. How long does it take prostate cancer to kill you? I said, I don't know. It depends on the cancer. Sometimes it can take as long as 20 years. And he looked at me and said, you think I want to live longer than that? So, I had it coming from both sides. I was taking the test. I was trying to get my family engaged, but some people are just resistant. And, but he passed away now, God rest his soul, but not from prostate cancer, natural death. But the thing is, we have certain resistances to doing these things. My doctor had a resistance. My uncle had a resistance. I went ahead and did what I was supposed to do, and after 10 years, my doctor said, we're going to stop doing that. And guess what? See, in the shadow between 40 and 68, I came up with a PSA of 18. That means that's a pretty fast-moving PSA, prostate cancer. Some of them live on sugar, some of them live on testosterone. Mine lives on testosterone, and evidently that moves pretty fast.
So here, let me just kind of give you guys a background. So, as far as I know, I am the first male in my family with prostate cancer. And it could be that I'm the first male that was diagnosed and went to the doctor to find out. I don't know. Now, I grew up in Louisiana. I don't know if you guys know about Cancer Alley. It has the highest cancer rates from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. And I grew up right outside of New Orleans. My mom died of breast cancer. I had an aunt die of breast cancer. 2 cousins died of breast cancer. But I don't know of any of my family members on the males, the males that actually had prostate cancer. And it could be because we didn't go get ourselves checked.
Yeah, my situation is very similar to yours, Anthony. I'm sorry. There's no males growing up in my life. As a matter of fact, like you, I'm the only male in my family that has prostate cancer. But none of my uncles, none of my father's brothers, my mother's brothers, none of my cousins, none of my male relatives today have prostate cancer. Like you, I was the only one. And it wasn't talked about growing up.
So one of the things when I started researching, it says that black men are more than twice as likely to develop prostate cancer as opposed to white men. Is it that is it real, or do you think that the number is so high because we don't get ourselves checked? Think it's
Well,
diets or genetics? What are your thoughts on that?
well, my thought is that in the black community, especially young black male and military and free and able to run wild, which I did. You're just not concerned about that. It's just not something you even think about when you're in your 20s and 30s. Typically, like I said, I only thought about it because my father passed away from it. If he hadn't passed away, I probably would not have even been testing it as early as I was. Uh, so, and then the doctor who, decided I didn't need more testing. I think he was looking at the same things that everybody else was looking at young age, and it doesn't matter black or white. But I think, there's some dissension inside that community too. So it's very difficult to know. The best thing to do is just start getting the test because they're very cost inexpensive. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
It's only a blood test, usually with the PSA, which I do say you should do them both because you just can't tell. One gives you one result and the other gives you another result. You need them both. So you can be on top of this thing. Because if you find these things early enough, they're definitely something you can do to make your life, make a better life. If you let it get too long and go too long, then you got a bigger uphill battle, and the results are not as much fun as you might want them to be, is if you catch this thing early in life, especially as a young man. So I don't know why our black folks don't necessarily do it, but I think most young people don't do it. Young people don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mentioned this, to both you guys. My wife is a doctor. We've been married 30 years. And I mean, shame on me. She looks at, well, she did up until more than a year ago. The things I would eat in front of this woman. And the things she would tell me, and I know, your birthday, you probably need to go ahead and get you a physical. I'm fine. I'm good. I would go to the doctor after she would push me and get a physical, and then my blood work would be messed up. Not the prostate stuff. I'm talking about before. I was borderline hypertension, borderline diabetes, and just wouldn't take care of myself. And I'm living with a doctor, man. And I don't know, just I guess, like you said, Larry, being young, you don't think about that stuff. And a lot of it I didn't. I just reflect and think about all the stuff I used to eat in the day, the calories, the sugar, the fried food, doing all of that stuff, you don't think about it. But I think when you get a little bit older, and I'll be 55 in August, you really start to think about your body and your health. And, I have 3 girls wanting to be around for them, to walk them down the aisle and play with grandkids and doing all of this stuff. But I think a lot of times we make that change a little too late. And I thank God that I was able to, kind of change my lifestyle more than a year ago with dieting and exercising and going to see my doctor on a regular basis. So I would just explain to you guys how I got to this point. In August, for my birthday, I did a physical. Did blood work, and PSA was up. I said, well, let's check it again because PSA can go up for a number of reasons. If you ride a bicycle, if you had just had sex, if you're doing all of that stuff, yep, Ron, I know we talk about bikes. Well, I had an e-bike, and we used to ride it a lot. So I said, my doc, come back, do it again in a month. Went back in September. It went even higher. asking me, hey, are you still riding bikes? Yeah. Sex? Yes. Come back in October. I go back in October, it's even higher. You need to see a urologist. Then I go through all of those motions and they're checking. And then I did a MRI and the MRI was actually fine. And the doctor said, well, we can really rule it out with a biopsy. And that's what happened a few weeks ago. And my Gleason score, you say yours was an 18, mine was an 8. So here we are.
But getting back to your question, I'm sorry, were you done, Anthony? Getting back to your question about the data and what do we think about the data, the fact that the data is showing that black men are more susceptible to getting prostate cancer than white men would imply that today more black men are getting tested. And that's what the data is showing. If we weren't getting tested as often as we are, then the data would be screwed the other way, saying that black men hardly ever get prostate cancer. So that's a good sign. The data is showing that we do get this. So we are becoming aware. We are getting tested. And that's what we're trying to do here is to impress on young black men who are watching this program that you need to make sure that at least annually you're getting a prostate exam, at least annually. And when you get into now I think they're saying 45, then you should be you should see a urologist, your general practitioner. Some GPs, by the way, don't even do this test anymore, right? Which is really unfair to those who are black. But once you get into 45, you should get a urologist and get this test done annually. And at some point, you keep track of those numbers because your numbers will go up with age, which is what my numbers did. See, my numbers went up with age. So I was 69 going on 70, and my numbers were in the fours, right? Which is fine for that age. But then I jumped from 4 to 5 to 5.7 in a year's time. And then I went through the process of getting the biopsy and identifying that some of those scores had cancer and getting my Gleason score. I was diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer because your Gleason score, depending what the number is, it would identify if your cancer is slow growing or advanced. And I had advanced. And then we had to go through that process of, okay, I've been diagnosed with cancer. Now, what do we do?